where I see Lloyd has just raised his hand. You can raise your hand, and what that does is it puts you in the upper left-hand corner of my screen, and I can see you immediately. And that we'll go through all the people who have raised their hands and get their questions and comments. So again, you'll find that under reactions at the bottom of your screen, and there's a little hand that says raise hand. And of course, when you're done, please put your hand down. Also, I am recording this so we can put it on YouTube. Thank goodness I remembered to do that. So people who can't take part tonight will be able to see it. And also, if you want to review something, you'll be able to do that. So we've got an interesting session tonight. I want to start out, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Art Ziegelbaum, K0AIZ. I'm the Midwest Division Director. And I got to tell you, this has got to be one of the best times for me in the ARRL for a lot of reasons. We've got an incredible board. We've got an incredible CEO, and we're looking forward, taking some incredible, really fantastic steps to move this organization forward. There's a lot of things that you are concerned about, that I'm concerned about, but I'll tell you, it really hit me when our CEO was talking about a tipping point. We're at a point where we're looking at going digital, where we're looking at advancing what the ARRL does to bring in more members, to do things that are more effective for our membership. And I'll tell you, from that standpoint, it's a good time. I'm also very excited because I've been doing a lot of looking. If you've heard me talk at a Hamfest or a club, you've heard me talk about the fact that, well, we all bemoan the fact that we've got a bunch of older people involved. There are some exciting young people who are bringing along the hobby and working in robotics and satellites and all kinds of things. Now, Dave Proper, our vice director, K2DP, and I went to University of Missouri's Science and Technology campus and gave out an award. W0EEE was Club Station was celebrating it. Ham Club was celebrating its 100th anniversary. And the people there were fantastic. They were excited about the same things I was excited about 60 years ago, 62 years ago to be precise, when I got started in this hobby. So I'd like to welcome you. Today, what we're going to do is I've given you my startup talk. There are a lot of things we want to talk about. I know you want to talk about the dues increase in digital magazines. I'm going to give people a chance to make some introductory comments, and then we're going to answer some questions that were raised at the last town hall meeting, and then I'll have a chance to introduce our CEO, David Minster, NA2AA. So let me do some introductions here. First of all, Dave Proper. Let me, if you put yourself in, well, let me highlight Dave Proper. Give David a chance to say hi. And David is our vice director.
Evening, everybody. It's great to see over 125 people online so far. I was counting the number of pages with 25 little squares on it. So I can't say hi to everybody, obviously, because I wasn't quick enough to memorize all 125 names, but it is great to see this participation. I know we had upwards of close to 200 people view the last meeting in real time, and another several hundreds of people view it on YouTube, view the recording. So that shows that there's tremendous interest in the town halls. We have not only David Minster on board tonight, but also our president, Rick Roderick, K5UR. So certainly want to say good evening to them. Art and I just spent a week with 30 of our closest friends at ARRL HQ for the last board meeting, and lots of good things took place there. So with that, I'll turn it back to Art.
Okay, thank you very much, Dave. And as I go through the list here, I'd like to, is our Iowa section manager on? Lee, are you here? I don't hear her. Maybe she'll be here later. From Kansas, Ron?
I'm here. Hi, Art.
Hi, Ron. Good to hear you. Would you like to say hi to the group?
Well, good evening, all. Hope you're able to stay cool in your shack and in front of the computer. Kansas has a Hamfest coming up in a couple of weeks. Hope to see some of you out there at Hutchinson at the Armory. Always a good time out there. And I want to remind everyone also of our upcoming QSO party contest at the end of August. I'll try to be on there and give out some Lynn County points. Thank you, Art.
Thank you very much, Ron. How about Missouri? Cecil, are you in here? I don't hear Cecil.
Yes, I are here.
Hi, Cecil.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you.
You have any comments you want to make to the group?
Well, we're getting into the time of year where it's really hot. We've got a lot of solar activity coming on. So if you're out there trying to get on 20, 40, whatever, be careful and don't get discouraged because you don't get as far as you'd like to go. Those solar flares have been hitting us pretty regular and have really kept us ionized. And, if you're new to ham radio, which many of you are not, welcome. And for those of us who have been here for a long time, we understand the pains of going through the season. So that's about all I've got, Art.
Thank you very much, Cecil. Let's see, how about Matt, the Nebraska section manager?
Yeah, good evening, Art, and welcome to everybody. It's real exciting times, Art. I agree with you completely. We're in a very unique time in the evolution of the ARRL and the fact that we're actually moving forward in a manner that will help to solidify the organization as a whole. With growth comes pain, and although I think that pain will be short-lived, and as the technology evolves, we've of course went from AM to sideband to FM to digital. As we go forward in the future, as we embrace the different modes, no doubt different operating practices, and also the way I think we're going to do contests and other events in the future will really evolve around the digital format and the ability to not only do I'm a DXer, I love DXing, and I think it's time for a great overhaul of the system to take a look at what technology has done for us and what might be available to us in regards to some of our foreign contacts. But very excited about the things that are moving forward, and looking forward to seeing what this year and the coming year will bring. So. And it's very good that we have great leadership at the league, at the ARRL, and also the fact that they're giving more encouragement and support for those of us who are in the field. It's very encouraging indeed in my 47 years.
I don't think you're that old, Matt, but thank you very much. Appreciate the comments. I'd like to introduce first of all, I'd like to quickly introduce Rick Roderick, K5UR. Rick is the president of our board. And Rick, do you want to say hello?
Well, yeah, Art, thanks a lot, and good to see everyone on here. I appreciate everybody taking the time to get on the call tonight. In fact, I was looking at all the names and calls and realized, and I don't know, maybe it's because I've just been at this a long time like you, Art, but I know a lot of people on here, not just from meeting at Hamfest or trading emails with, but I've talked to a good number of folks on this call tonight on the bands, particularly 2 meters and things like that over the years, since we're so close, particularly up for you Kansas folks and Missouri. But anyway, it's good to see everyone, and I think Art made some real good introductory comments there. I like Matt's comments; he hit the nail on the head about looking to the future and different things that we've got to take into account. And I hope that through these kinds of conference calls that Art and the team can inspire everyone on here to do just a little bit more, looking forward at the legacy. I often speak of the legacy we're going to leave. What are we going to leave behind to make sure somebody's going to be in our seat 100 years from now doing this same thing in some form, probably much different fashion. So I'm encouraged that we're having these kinds of calls, and I do appreciate everybody being on here tonight. Thank you, Art, and thanks everybody.
Thank you very much, Rick. I'm going to introduce now for a quick hello, David Minster, NA2AA. David, of course, is the CEO of the ARRL. David, would you like to say hello?
Yep. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here this evening. And Art, thank you for inviting me. I did the same thing that Rick did, which was to take a look around all of the faces on the different screens before we got started. And of course, trying to work the Midwest on 2 meters is a little more difficult when you grow up in New Jersey. But one of the faces that's in the crowd this evening that I want to point out is someone who is who's a very special resource that comes from your part of the world, and that's Kyle AA0Z, who is selfless in giving of himself to help educate people in different aspects of amateur radio, especially Node Red, where he's really distinguished himself. But this evening, I want to, when we get to my part of the agenda, I'm gonna take you back a little bit, try to give you a little bit of context about how we got where we are, and the point that Art made before about being at a tipping point. This is yet another tipping point in amateur radio and at ARRL, which has to do with the digital transformation of ARRL. So we'll talk a bit about that this evening, and then hopefully answer some of your questions. Thanks, Art.
Thank you very much, David. And I'd also like to introduce a particularly good friend of mine, somebody who supported me when I was section manager and is still an incredible resource for the ARRL. That's Steve Ewald, WV1X. Steve, would you like to say hello to the group?
Why, sure. Thank you very much, and good evening to everyone there on tonight's call. Thank you for the invitation to join. I get so much out of these discussions here throughout the time. So a good meeting to all, and thanks to all of your support for ARRL. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, I'm going to talk for just a minute here, and then before we'll get going, again, I would like you to ask questions. Please raise your hand, and I'll try to catch you as you go. I'll go according to the list from left to right as I see the hands. Couple of comments. First of all, at the last town hall meeting, we had some questions, and I want to review those. There was questions about adding a digital DXCC certificate, and I do want to point out that there is a DXCC digital endorsement that's available if you want to do your 300 countries digital. Also, comments were made about taking a hard look at DXCC, and I do want to point out that the DX Advisory Committee is working on DXCC 2025, which is a complete re-examination of the DXCC, and is going to result, I think, in some upgrades to the program, and can't wait to see how that comes out. We had a suggestion about allowing extra class amateurs who have WAS, worked all states certificates, to check cards for worked all states. I haven't had a chance to work that with the PS Programs and Services Committee. I will bring that up. I do want to point out something I learned, which I should have known, and that is, if you have a special service club, you can nominate somebody to be an award manager, and that award manager can check cards for all the awards except DXCC. So WAS, WAAC, BUCC. If you search for award manager on the ARRL website, you'll find out more about that. Anybody have any other questions? Oh, somebody, I see a note here. I'm still working on worked all neighbors. Yes, I remember those problems from the old days. Anyway, does anybody have any questions or comments before we move on? All right, with that, I would very much like to reintroduce David Minster, our CEO, somebody who's become an incredible leader, is taking us to new places where we've needed to go for a long time, and does a wonderful job at motivating the board and the people involved to do great new things. So let me turn it over to David.
Okay, thank you very much, Art. This evening, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on ARRL. When I came in 3 years ago, what I found in the organization, as I use the expression "just a member." I was just a everyday ham who had been a lifelong ARRL member, never voted in an election, except the last election for my for the director in my division. So coming in, I really didn't know that much about the internals of ARRL. I was really coming in with I think a pretty strong business background and a strong amateur radio experience background, but really not that much knowledge about ARRL. What I found in the organization after really just about the first week or 10 days was an organization that had been kicking the can down the road from a revenue perspective. This is an organization that for more than 2 decades has been cost cutting and chipping away, trying to figure out how to save money here and there. And the big issue is that at some point, once you've gone through and you've cut away all the fat, you really have to start to cut into muscle. And that decision means starting to cut into programs and services that our ARRL members expect. Now, one of the things, believe it or not, that I had never really realized is that ARRL some years ago began bundling all 4 of its publications digitally with membership. Now, I've always had QST and have always enjoyed reading it and searching it through the web interface. So I quite enjoy reading digital QST, and again, love the ability without having bookshelf after bookshelf of musty, smelly magazines from 50 years ago, 100 years ago, to be able to go back and research articles and read them. But in any event, it was very clear that the organization needed to deal with a revenue problem. Now, one of the things that was going on when I got to headquarters is that we were smack dab in the middle of COVID. So COVID, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your point of view, masked the financial issues that ARRL was having. And how did it do that? Well, one of the things that it did was it made it difficult to recruit open positions. All travel stopped, or most travel stopped. But we stopped attending shows so that in 2020, there was no Hamvention that year, right? And it rolled on into 2021. We received a PPP loan that was forgiven, which showed up as an exceptional item in our P&L, which is great, right? It's found money. But the underlying business had problems that needed to be addressed. And again, depending on your point of view, fortunately or unfortunately, a couple of years went by before I think it really came to people's attention that something needed to be done, and needed to be done quickly. Now, one of the other things that I'll tell you, and I speak quite strongly about this because of the emails that I get, but it's a different time in amateur radio as a small community. By the way, how small are we? I went to a little football school in central Ohio, right? Ohio State. And that stadium holds just over 100,000 people. And there's a little school to the north that I don't like to talk about, but I do like to put them in a bowl and beat them for 3 hours once a year, right? But if you take Ohio State and Michigan's football stadiums, those 2 stadiums seat probably in the neighborhood of 220,000 people. I couldn't give away a ticket to every ARRL member to go to one of those 2 stadiums. We have a very small community that we have here. And I have to tell you that the impact of social media since about 2015 on this organization has been terrible. And in sort of the 2017 to 2020 range, when I came into ARRL, it created such a toxic atmosphere within our community that as an organization, even though we knew that we needed to do something financially, we also knew that we needed to take a pause and work to rebuild what was lacking at headquarters and rebuild the trust with our members to show them that ARRL was not a social media driven radio club, but was a 501c3 corporation that exists to serve its members. And I will tell you, we work very, very hard to do that. So in taking a look at the financials, I knew that we needed to be able to do something from a revenue perspective. And we've done some things. We introduced, for example, an end-fed half-wave antenna kit. You know, we sold, excuse me, we sold over 5,000 of these things, which is great. You know, the margin's not huge because, you know, we're not looking to compete with antenna manufacturers and take a ton of money. What we're looking to do is we're looking to inspire people to get radioactive, to get them on the air. And yes, there's some margin built into that does help the membership by selling things like that. But how many antenna kits can you add to the ARRL store to try to right the situation that the organization's in? There's another aspect to where the organization is financially. Is I want you to think about if you were running a business and your expenses went up 3 to 5% every year, which by the way is not a lot. Okay. If your business went up, your expenses went up 3 to 5% a year, how often do you think you would have to change the price of your product in order to stay in business? Well, ARRL only did it twice in 22 years. I mean, that's nuts, you know, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that you're not going to be able to stay in business doing that. And it also doesn't take Warren Buffett to show you what the effect of compound interest is. In this case, if you're looking at just 3% per year since the last dues increase, just the consumer, the sort of the CPI has gone up to about 27%. And by the way, if we applied that 27% to our dues, it would put it up over $60, right? But in any event, so this was the year that we were going to have to make a tough decision. And it was going to be complicated because there's a lot of moving parts, right? There's dues, there's magazines, there's life membership, there's Diamond Club. You know, what do you do? And one of the things that I've done at headquarters is, and I hope that I see Steve Ewald nodding his head viciously as I say this, but one of the changes that I believe I've put into ARRL is we really function as an organization that is collaborative. You know, gone are the days when one guy can sit in a room and say that clubs are dead. And all of a sudden that's the you know, the official stance of ARRL is that clubs are dead. Again, that was something that when I came into ARRL, we had one person who had taken that decision and the rest of the organization was falling in line behind. So changing the culture at ARRL to be a culture of yes, no more knee-jerk no reactions, try to do the best we can for our members. Even if we get down the road and figure out that we can't do what they want to do, we're at least going to sit and study it and see whether or not we can make it happen, right? But that notion of collaboration, that ability to hear from people, even from disparate people from different parts of the business, that come with a different experience and a different pair of eyes looking at the same situation. You know, we make better business decisions by collaborating together. So when it came time, I would say about a year ago, I started to talk at events everywhere about the fact that we were going to be looking at some kind of some kind of a restructuring of our dues. Last year at Pacificon last October, as I was talking through this, there was a woman in the front row who gasped and said, "Don't take away my print magazine." I said, "Well, if you had to pay for it separately, would you do that?" And she said, yes, but don't take away my printed magazine. So, those are the kinds of opinions, the kind of voices that we wanted to be able to fold into the messaging. But it was so important to me to hear from members that we decided to do a survey, a dues survey, which I hope many of you participated in. When we first started the dues survey, Bob Inderbitson, who's been at ARRL since graduating college, and I believe he was the first recipient of an ARRL scholarship. He's deeply experienced in doing surveys with members, and he said to me that if I got more than 2,000 responses, I should consider myself lucky. I looked at the numbers and said, if we can get between 20 and 30,000, I'll feel lucky. And fortunately for me, right there at the end, with one last member bulletin push, we cleared through 20,000, and we're on our way to 21. So I was very, very pleased at the level of participation. And the responses were pretty clear to us. Members were, as we expected they would be, supportive of ARRL needing to take the dues up in order to keep the organization going. We knew because there are some people, again, like me, who like to use digital QST, and we see those people. There's I don't know, 20-some thousand right now that are using digital QST, and that number will rise. But we knew that separating print QST was going to be controversial. We wanted to do two things. We wanted to remind members of the benefits that ARRL offers, and we wanted to hear back from them on the things that are most important to them. One of the things, if you go to the dues survey, is most of the most popular items on that list are all digital. So our digital publications, LOTW, you take a look at the things that are there. Even our product reviews, benefit greatly from the digital positioning within QST and our ability to offer a technical information service, right? So a lot of what we do today is digital. But this tipping point that Art referred to earlier, it's actually a book from Malcolm Gladwell. And I won't go through what the elements of a tipping point are, but it basically comes down to, it's a point in time where essentially there's major change, and the major change is driven by the few. It's driven by a small number of people. There's a stickiness to the message. So it's something that's well articulated and it resonates with people. And if you think back, it was actually a pretty hard question that a member asked me last year in Dayton. Was he asked me, what year did amateur radio become irrelevant? And I said, well, wait a minute. I don't know that I agree that amateur radio is irrelevant. And he said, well, he goes, I want you to think about this. He said, up into the 90s, we still had kids' attention in high schools. There were still amateur radio club stations in the high schools. But with the advent of the internet and with all of these cell phones spreading, somewhere in the late 90s, we sort of lost the young people in this country. The kinds of things that got us excited as young people are gone, and they've been replaced. So what's the message? What is it that gets people excited? about amateur radio. And I would argue that, you know, irrespective of which year it was, that was a tipping point for amateur radio. And if you go and you take a look at what the demographics of ARRL looks like, I'll tell you what, if you love this hobby and you love ARRL, you should be scared, because it's predominantly 70 and 80-year-old men. That's amateur radio today. That's ARRL today. Now, one of the things, it's sort of a frustrating question, because it shows a certain level of either not doing their homework or ignorance or bias. But a question that I hear, I actually see them in emails. I don't know that I've ever had someone ask me this question in person, but why does ARRL only have 150 some thousand members out of 780,000 licensed US hams? And the answer should be self-apparent, right? The reason is that we have made getting an amateur radio license in this country too easy. There's no Morse code anymore. And you could argue, hey, that's great. Look at what it did for the ranks. Okay. So we radically grew amateur radio with a bunch of people that got their license and did nothing. They never had any intention of doing anything, but now they're licensed. And how long are they in our ranks? If you said 12 years, you're right. It's not 10, because there's a 2-year forgiveness, a grace period. So if somebody comes in and helps their nephew or their son or their daughter get a technician license when they're in middle school or high school and never had any intention of doing anything, it takes 12 years to wash those people out of the numbers. So does amateur radio grow every year? Well, it has up until now. It does not look like the numbers for 2023 will grow. It looks like the numbers are down. So if you look at the demographics of amateur radio, and let's just pick a number and say that the bulk of our members and hams are 60 and older, what do we offer young people to get them excited? And the answer is, it's digital. They love digital networking. They love digital tools. You know, they're very, very excited about space. We just did a Teacher Institute level 2 program at headquarters. When we reached out to the ABC and I think it was ABC and CBS affiliates locally, they sent trucks over within half an hour so that they could record our teachers out in the parking lot with tape measure antennas that they built working the International Space Station. And it made the news. And people were, you know, the feedback that we got from the community here locally was really good feedback. In fact, we have a local state senator, a Connecticut state senator, who heard about Teachers Institute and came to headquarters to find out what it's all about, because she'd like to see whether or not there's an opportunity to stitch what we're doing with Teachers Institute into some kind of a state program. So there's a lot of opportunity ahead, but I will tell you that the opportunities that we have, they're not in paper. You know, we have 30,000 volunteer examiners. We have a big VE group. You know what they do most of the time? Process paper and answer phones. You know, why, after all these years, why isn't every volunteer examiner that's affiliated with ARRL, why aren't they insisting that all of their exams be done electronically? And it may challenge the clubs, it may challenge the groups that are doing this. But, you know, it's one of those things where you have to realize that while we've been enjoying some of the little point solutions that we've created to feel good about being digital, like Logbook of the World, right? Your ability to do electronic QSLing, that's fabulous. We did it more than 2 decades ago, and paper QSLs are still around. Does it mean paper QSLs are wrong? No. But when you take a look at what Logbook of the World has in terms of digital confirmations, it's extraordinary. You know, there's a lot of change going on in amateur radio, and ARRL has been very, very slow to not just keep up, but we haven't led. We've lost the leadership that used to exist. I mean, how many people bought handbooks back in the 60s and 70s and built something? I did. Come to my office at headquarters and let me show you the 2-tube transmitter that's in my office that my dad and I sat on the basement floor together and built. And I had to make contacts on that thing before he'd let me go any further in amateur radio. So we've got a lot of work to do as an organization. I think that the dues increase was a Band-Aid. I think it buys us 3 or 4 years. You know, again, we can't, inflation's running at what, 8-9%? Cost of living, I don't get Social Security yet, but some of you may tell me that Social Security last year had one of the biggest annual increases in years. Cost of living has gone up dramatically. And, you know, these are the things that we have to manage, along with all of the other things that we do as a business. So the last piece that I just want to touch on, and you know, Art pointed this out, there's been some questions that have some hands up, and I just wanted to get through this because maybe I'll answer some of your questions as I finish up. But you know, one of the other things, in fact, I was on a Zoom call just before this one. Every single week, we have a group of people that get together to work on the future strategy for ARRL. This is not some 5 to 10 year pie in the sky, feel good exercise. We're looking at what the underlying business models of ARRL needs to be. It's things that I've been challenging members to come forward and talk to us about in terms of the role that they think we need to play within amateur radio. And I will tell you that the future of amateur radio is not in getting 50 and 60-year-old people into the hobby. Now we'll do that, right? I mean, that's what we do all the time. We market to newly licensed hams. We market to different pockets of the community. Rick and I are about to do a membership appeal to international users of LOTW, just to give you a little sense of what you're paying for as a member, right? And don't climb out of your chair. But we've got something like 60,000 users of Logbook of the World who live in Europe who are not members. They don't pay a penny to use LOTW. Now they do when they go to apply for an award, right? So there's that. But in terms of them, you know, uploading their logs, getting digital confirmations, you know, things like that, they're able to use the system, game the system with FT8. You know, we have a lot of work to do and ongoing work to do in terms of marketing. But for us to make any kind of material impact on the demographics of amateur radio, we need to be able to extend the programs that we've done with Teachers Institute and reaching younger people. I will tell you right now, if you go walking up to your local middle school or high school, they'll probably call the police, right? Like they don't want people walking up to school saying, hey, I'm here to help. Let me teach a ham radio class. You know, the way into the schools is with the teachers. The The other thing that we've been doing is we've had a collegiate program, and the collegiate amateur radio program has been phenomenal. It meets every month. We've got colleges and universities from all over the United States that come in. You know, these college kids don't suffer fools well, right? They get on there, they don't have a whole lot of time. They've got an agenda, they've got a speaker. You know, they're very, very driven. They're very focused at sort of accomplishment, and they want to knit amateur radio into their lives. So that to me, as I look out at the sort of the next 3 to 4 years, we have to be able to attract younger people back to amateur radio, and it's going to be through a path of being relevant to their education through STEM, not through listening to Radio Moscow and then getting your ham radio license because CB channel 10 was too crowded. But anyway, that's all I've got. Art, I'll turn it back to you for coordination.
I know you've got a lot more than that. That's not all you got, but thank you very much, David. We do have a bunch of questions. I'm going to let the people with their hands raised go in the order that they raised their hand. First of all, Lloyd, KC5 FM, please unmute and ask your question or make your comment.
And thank you, David, for being here. Thank you, Art, for hosting, and thank you, other David, for being a leadership in this division. At the ARRL forum at Ham Holiday this weekend, we missed you there, Dave, but we understood that the travel has been difficult. But the forum was well attended, and a lot of questions were and comments were proposed. One of my volunteers at one point heard me say, when you come to my meetings, if you're going to gripe, I need 2 or 3 solutions for it. Well, in that vein, I'm going to say in the forum, it was reported that about 20% of the membership is going to leave because of the dues increase. Coupled with that, about 50% of the unmet budget needs still goes unmet because of the dues increase. And I bring up this point again, that an affinity program, and the league, believe it or not, has one. They have the branded ARRL insurance, and they have a branded ARRL debit card, credit card rather. So why don't we propose an affinity program? Because the biggest gripe that I heard at the forum was, what do I get out of the league? Regardless of the blog post that I put up every year quoting Lee Iacocca, if you can find a better international amateur radio club, then join it. And the league is the only one. So that's my question. Why not have an affinity program, Dave? Thank you.
Yeah, I get so two quick things. The first thing is that in terms of affinity programs, we're too small. The credit card did not work out. The ARRL branded insurance is something that we have to work very hard at to keep going. It is not something that makes the insurance companies that we've worked with in the past any kind of revenue. We don't look important, but because of relationships that exist within the companies that we've worked with in the past and the one that we're working with today, we've been able to continue to offer that. Yeah, I've heard of offering rent-a-car affinity. There's a laundry list of them are there, but we're just too small. We would not generate the kind of revenue that the affinity partner would be looking for. And even if we could convince them to go for 1 year to give it a shot, it's extremely unlikely that they would come back for a second year. The other thing I wanted to comment on, Lloyd, which again is one of those things, I opened up by saying I've been a lifelong member. The way that I looked at ARRL my whole life is ARRL's always had my back. So let me tell you a little story about something going on in the world today, which is something called high frequency trading. And if you don't know what this is, the long story short is that there's a type of trading called arbitrage, which requires you to do a simultaneous buy and sell in order to make money. And the way that you can do that is when you see something before everybody else in the market does, so that you can buy ahead of it and sell it to somebody else who's sort of, for lack of a better term, uneducated or unwitting. And you're able to structure a trade where you're able to make money. And there are a group of people, companies, that have determined that when you take a look at the efficiency of a dielectric of fiber versus microwave versus HF, that the quickest way that you can get data into the New York and Chicago trading environments from overseas is through HF. And so a proposal went into the FCC. And I can't tell you how many people have been screaming at the top of the lungs, where is ARRL? Oh, well, okay. So for the people that say they don't understand what ARRL's benefits are, then really one of the major things that we do is we do advocacy. We do pay attention to this stuff. I will tell you that unless there's a reason to get members all stirred up about something, the best thing that you can do with a proposal to the FCC is not put a spotlight on it. If you make a big deal out of it, then the FCC makes a big deal out of it. And it's in our best interests many times not to make a big deal out of something, but to very quietly put forward our position. We have a great working relationship with the FCC. And when we put forward comments, they take them very seriously. So that benefit to me as a lifelong member of ARRL has always been one of the things. I don't need a list in QST. I don't need someone to put a PowerPoint presentation up. That's one of the things that we do, that we're focused on. And as a result, we've got a seat at the table with FCC and many seats at the tables with ITU. And, that's one of the major benefits in supporting a national organization like ARRL. Go ahead, Art.
Thank you very much, David. And I absolutely agree. When you're fighting back a group that has a lot of lawyers, a lot of professional, a lot of money, looking professional, having the technical and legal arguments that back you is much more important than people screaming the sky is falling. And I absolutely agree with that. Now, by the way, if you turn on your camera, I will share the spotlight so people can see you. Matt, you have your camera on. I'm going to put you on the screen, and I want you to go ahead and ask your question.
Oh, there we go. Technology. David, thank you very much for your leadership and what you're doing. You'd made a comment in regards to technology and getting kids involved. Well, we're doing it here on a smaller basis, but we hope to have a global, if not a bigger impact. We are actually blending a couple of different arts, the art of amateur radio and the art of astronomy. We started here 9 years ago in a little observatory in the back of our property called the Branched Oak Observatory. And now we're absolutely a world-class experience. So we've got satellite communications, we've got a Jove radio telescope, we've got also cosmic ray detector, but the coup de grace, the cornerstone, capstone experience is Earth, Moon, Earth. We have developed, my good friend Doug Berman devised and created our EME. We have 4 32-foot cross-polarized Yagis on a 15-foot H-frame, 25-foot in the air, run with a 1500-watt Beco amplifier. And the whole idea is to get kids curious about space, about radio, and about just what makes things work. And just really quickly, the kids coming in, we're asking them, how far do you think the moon is away? And we've been getting great answers, anywhere from 50 miles to 5 million miles. We tell the kids, hey, great answer. And it says, how would you like to be able to prove that? So we get them involved. We actually figure out the radio waves and the speed of light using a microwave and a Hershey bar to start that off with. That's a real fun experiment. And then we talk to the kids about radio waves, space, the moon, the sun, and how radio waves work. And then we get them in front of the microphone. And then we get them, of course, after proper identification, we have them go say, hi, moon. And they get a chance to hear their voice come back 2 to 2.5 seconds later. And the look on their faces is just amazing. It's spectacular. And kids get a chance to do something that very few people in this world get a chance to do. And that's actually to send their voice into outer space and to have it come back and hear their own voice come back. Each astronaut gets a patch that looks very mission-esque. It calls Project Moon Bounce. And then they all receive a certificate that says, I went to the moon and back at the Branched Oak Observatory. It's got their guess, their time, their answer, and then we compare it to what they do. And we partner also with the local school district, Lincoln Public Schools, and we'll be bringing them out for the first time since we've been organized. And we've actually made that radio system was a community collaboration. About $23,000 was invested between two organizations that saw the vision of what we're trying to do. And then we're also finishing up a $500,000 new multi-purpose center where we're going to be able to have a great classroom, 1,200 square foot classroom. And then one of the leading fiber providers, we helped them to acquire and get a multi-million-dollar grant, and they're going to run a dedicated line out from Lincoln, Nebraska, out to our little observatory at Raymond, because here again, they caught the vision about what we're trying to do. And one more thing, about robotics and so forth. Robotics, very important, very exciting. That covers all the aspects of STEM, but we're going to add a twist to it, David. And that is, instead of just using a little remote control or something that's pre-programmed, we're going to take the command and control signals, send it up to a satellite, have it, of course, repeat it, bring it back down, and then retransmit that to the rover. And so we're going to have successful runs, and we're going to have ones that don't work so well, and those will be successful failures, because kids will get a chance to think critically and realize that, yep, we didn't get the job done, but we figured out a way to get the mission complete. And one other final thing here, the digital technology, I think what we're doing, we're heading in the right direction. People ask me, of course, the same question, what does the ARRL do for me? And I said, let me ask you a question. Do you enjoy operating? And unequivocally, most people will say yes. And I said, well, if you can't operate, all you have, or all you will wind up with, is really pretty dusty museum pieces. I don't want it to happen on my watch where we wind up saying, why didn't we do something? And so the point that you're making, I've been in business for over 50 years, David, and the fact that it's the organization that really didn't keep up with the times, as it were, we're feeling the pinch and the pain now. And I think there's some more painful moments in the future, but I think overall the organization itself is going to be on really solid ground. And I really appreciate the leadership that you're providing. Appreciate Art, and I appreciate Dave here in our division.
Just just like right on, ticking all the boxes, right? I would just ask you to do me a favor and to reach out to Steve, K5ATA, and let him know what you're doing with the kids with EME. I think that's absolutely phenomenal. I do know that, I don't know if they still do it or not, but ARRL did something where, in fact, I think they got a grant from ARDC to redo the operating system for programming the robots with that transmitting, movement signals up to like ISS or something and have it come back down. So you may find that there's some overlap there. And of course, ARRL, one of the other things that we do is we help fund ARRL. So if there's some overlap there, and you want to share some resources and get involved with some of the stuff that they're doing, let us know, and happy to help.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think getting you together with Steve would be a great idea. So We'll make that
Don't
happen.
remind me, Art.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right, we have some more questions here. George Blake, W6BDD, has a question. I'm going to spotlight him, or a comment. And by the way, George received one of our ARRL scholarships. Congratulations, George. You need to unmute.
Muted.
There we go.
There
Is that
you
better?
go. You bet.
Actually, I've been awarded 2 years in a row now. So $1,000 last year and 10,000 this year. At 60, I decided to go back for the 4th time and try to get my degree. So I'm attending ASU right now, Arizona State University. I'm in the ASU club. I'm an officer. They are in a rebuilding process. They a few years ago, the president, Nabhan, I can't even pronounce his last name. He's from India. Fakhruddin, I think is what his name is. He got inspired. He's one of the only people that was in the club, went in and pitched about 2,000 pounds of World War II equipment, and went in, he took down a 50-foot tower, repaired the antenna. And we've so far got about 50 students in the club, and a couple of good advisors, and a few of us, older people are in there. So to that end, well, let me first make a comment. I wholeheartedly agree that digital is the future. Although I think we still need to keep the old modes around, but I think digital is the future. I have to take a little issue with the code, because I didn't get my license till about 3 years ago. And one of my biggest problems, one of my biggest stumbling blocks, was the code. And since I've gotten my license, I've actually voluntarily started to learn code. I have several students at ASU that are in the club who also got their licenses without code, and then took it upon themselves to start learning code. So I think instead of having a forced posture to learn it, for those of us, because honestly, I have a little bit of a learning deficit problem. If you're given the opportunity to learn it, I think it's better. I think not to force something on somebody. The technology enough is, hard enough to get in and get your license. So, but otherwise, I think it's wonderful. I got my license. The problem, the obstacle, you're talking about the young people. The obstacle I see is a lack of concern, a lack of attention. The Ham Club at ASU was in decline for at least 7 years. And the reason is because nobody has gone in there to take it upon themselves to try to help the club muster the interest. I asked Nabhan and the other officers, I says, have you published anything to the local section manager? Their response was, we don't know who that is. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you talk to the Arizona State section manager or Arizona State manager? We don't know who that is. Did you get a list of the clubs in the area? Because they were talking about putting up a 2-meter repeater. I said, there's probably 2-meter repeaters all over the Phoenix area. I said, have you guys looked at a list? We don't know how to do that. Okay. So I've been feeding them all this information, things like also about the scholarships and QS. We have the Arizona QSO party coming up in October. So we set up an event for that through ASU. There's nobody going in and saying, hey, I'm from ARRL. I'm here from the management. I'm here from the section. I'm here from the state. I'm here from the club. What can we do for you? How can we help you? I mean, they need equipment. Somebody's got something sitting in their shack, they would be happy to get rid of, or happy to donate for, the deduction or whatever. There's nobody going out, and this is also true at the high school levels, like around, where I am. I'm in Olathe, Kansas. I don't see people going out and saying, hey, we really are, here to see you. We're here to show you that we're interested in you. And like you said, a lot of us are in our 50s on up. Okay. Do we get the interest to go out and push for this? Do we go out to University of Kansas? Do we go out to K-State? Do we go out to wherever, just on occasional basis? Hey, go and talk to the electronics department, go and talk to the aerospace engineering department, go in and talk to the bio engineering department. Nabhan, our president, is in biomechanical engineering. He's not in electrical engineering, but he decided to go into biomechanical engineering. He's the president of our club. And he wants to be here for the long term, as long as it takes him to get the PhD to be in charge of the club or to help the club grow. So,
George, you're making some really good points. I'm sorry to interrupt. We have a bunch
ahead.
of hands up. So if you'd like to go ahead and finish up and give David a chance to respond.
That's pretty much it. So,
all right. Sorry to be the mean guy.
No, that's fine. I understand.
No, George, you make great points. Just a couple of things. One of the things that would be useful if they're not already on there is for the ASU club to get on the ARRL collegiate amateur radio program calls. I do know, I think Bob Inderbitzen, who runs that program, I think his daughter just graduated from ASU. So he certainly must know some of the people that are down there. But yeah, we know that we have a lot of work to do. It's what we do every single day, which, oh, sorry, Bob said the University of Arizona. Ooh, sounds like a football rivalry to me.
Forks up, sorry.
Exactly. But in any event, I think it's important that you, either have their president or someone else from there reach out to Bob NQ1R at headquarters and join the collegiate group. Art, back to you.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate the comment, George. Let's see here. We have another person coming up. By the way, we got a note. Matt, if you get a chance, why don't you send me a link to the Branched Oak effort, and I'll send that out to the division so people can follow up. We have a question from William Grimsby. I don't see your call on there, but you can tell us. In any case, let me spotlight you. There you are. Please unmute and ask your question or make your comment.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the opportunity. It's good to talk with you. One of the things that I was looking through the QST magazine, and yes, I get it in paper and I get it digitally. But I was paging through it and looking through the ads, and I got curious how many pages are dedicated to advertising in QST, NCJ, QEX, OTA. And I came up with about 30% of each one of the magazines is dedicated to advertising. And my question is, is the cost of advertising going up kind of commensurate with the dues going up? How much how much revenue does the league make from the advertising? What percentage of the revenue?
So there was a couple of questions in there. So first of all, the advertising revenue is small. It is about I'd say it's running about $1.5 million a year. And we have a challenge in our hobby, in our community, in that manufacturers are not advertising like they used to anymore. We've got a couple of big advertisers who have historically been big advertisers. I would not tell you their name because I wouldn't want you to make a phone call. But we've had advertisers tell us, you're not important to our business anymore. You know, we only stay advertising in the magazine to be loyal to ARRL. You know, these are companies that spend a lot of money making sure that they're in front of your face in a browser, so that when you go out and you take a look at some crazy website, as you look to the left-hand side of the screen, there's a bunch of ads from a retailer, and they're paying to infuse their ads sort of no matter where you go on the internet. That's where they see the benefit of advertising. So the you know, the future of advertising for us has to be driven digitally. We have to be able to give advertisers easier ways to do things like link to product descriptions or link to specific specials. You could use something called site infusion to allow an advertiser, a retailer, to digitally change their ad every week, so that it's not a one and done that sits in a magazine, but through the way that the advertising is done, you're able to see what the current offering is, the current special is, and be able to click on that. There's a lot of things that we think that we can do to work with our advertisers, so that we give them better value for the money that they spend with us. Frankly, so that they don't go away, so that they don't say, hey, you know, and some have. Again, I don't want to mention any brands. You can figure that out for yourself, but you know, there's some brands that have entirely left QST, and they've taken that business decision. You did hit on something that I think is very important. One of the benefits of having a digital magazine is that we're not bound by pages anymore. You know, the way that we look at the magazine today is it costs us real money to print this magazine. When we had a paper problem last year, May of 2022, it cost us an additional $43,000 just for that 1 month to get paper. You know, the printing supply chain is nuts for a small organization like us. And you know, we just can't willy-nilly decide to add a bunch of pages to the magazine because we think that there's an important article that's come along. You know, if we go to put something in, something else is going to have to suffer. When you have a digital magazine along with a print magazine, one of the things that you can do is create digital supplements each month. So if you get the paper, you read the paper, but then in the digital supplement, the kinds of articles that we couldn't sacrifice other content for, we can now print digitally. So there's a lot of good things that can come from migrating our eyeballs from paper to digital. And listen, I appreciate it. There are people that are going to be very, very upset about this. I don't think it's going to be as big as some of the numbers that were quoted earlier, but we'll see. Art, back to you.
All right, thank you very much for the comment and the question. I'd like to invite Cecil, our Missouri section manager. He had his hand up, so Cecil, I'm going to spotlight you, and please unmute and ask your question or make your comment.
Unmute, Cecil. There you go.
And I thought he was immutable.
Okay. Apparently my computer is wanting to play some other game. I'm not sure what's up there. Anyway, look, you know, we're talking about getting young people involved in the ARRL and stuff, and I'm working with several high schools and several other young youth organizations and stuff like that. One of the things that we're working on is, most of them being in Missouri, we have these little things called tornadoes, and a lot of these kids remember Joplin from 10, 12 years ago. And, you know, we had a tremendous loss of life there. And their parents, some of their parents went to school there, some of their parents were around, went down to help, whatever. Okay. I only say that for this. The young people in our area seem to be very interested in digital as what you're talking about. However, you know, the questions they're asking me are this. They say, how can we incorporate our amateur radio into a daily carry something so we can use digital either through our phone or through our handheld that would allow us to talk like we're on HF? And I really didn't have much of an answer for that. I told him, I said, well, you know, technology is evolving all the time, and we've got some things we can do where you can relay into your UHF station and then retransmit through your HF station and blah, blah, blah. It's all the stuff we're all aware of. And these kids, the intriguing thing is, you know, they want to send messages to, you know, these kids go to Orlando, Florida without their parents now. You know, I wouldn't let my kids do that in high school, but they do that now. So, you know, they want to be able to have this communications as a family. And it's, I'm going to say it verges on the prepper lifestyle, the way they do it around here. But it's not really prepper. It's just simply communication wise is what they call it. We just want to be able to do this. So my question would be, what new forms of digital are we looking at? Are we, as the ARRL, looking to provide, steer toward, partner with company? What are we wanting to do there? I think that would be a very serious and very deep question that we would need to ask ourselves, and we would need to go through the process of maybe, you know, putting together a small kit form, because believe it or not, these young people are talking about building their own radio stuff so they carry it with them, because, you know, stuff is getting so small they can do that now. And, you know, we know digital is the future, whether it be digital magazines or digital radio. It's going that way whether we want it to or not. You know, the best thing we can do is help steer it in the correct direction and do our best to help with that. So what are we doing with the ARRL? What is our thought process? What are we looking at doing there?
So you've asked a few questions there. Let me see if I can just sort of bundle it together into a single message. So first of all is we as an organization aren't software innovators. We're not the ones that are out there. I don't pretend for a minute that we've got people that are going to compete with Joe Taylor from Princeton on writing digital modes. You know, but there are certainly people that are out there in terms of what they're doing with WinLink and Vera, and the myriad versions of Olivia and all of these other digital modes that are out there, right? There's a whole basket that people can choose to try to operate with. But there's two things that you struck on that really resonated strongly with me. The first one is, you know, Homeland Security, FEMA, they refer to the resilient citizen, right? These aren't preppers. These are people that understand that there are bad things that happen in the world, and they may be living in a place where they have to stand up and take responsibility for what happens when bad things happen, like, you know, phone poles come down, there's no phone lines, there's no internet, you know, if there's no power, the local cell towers may be down. What are you going to do, right? How are you going to reach out? And there's a lot of different ways to do that. I mean, one of the guys that really gets me jazzed is a YouTuber, KM4ACK. You know, here's a guy that now he's migrated on. He's now espousing moving away from the Raspberry Pi to I think it's called a Wowie. I wound up buying one just on his recommendation, and I'm going to load it up with Linux and follow him. But, you know, here's a guy that showed what you could do with a Raspberry Pi, basically pulling it out of a bag. and he showed how to use it on HF. He has shown how to use it on VHF. He's shown how to link it into a USB dongle that does GPS so that you get a real-time clock for FT8 and the other digital modes that require, time synchronization. So there's a lot of people that are doing good work out there. I think the role that ARRL plays in this is that we really try to curate the content, and we really try to find the best of the best. As I said when I started, you guys have an amazing resource in Kyle, AA0Z. You're lucky that you've got a guy like that. I will tell you, there's not many of them. Yeah, there are a lot of people that have YouTube channels, and not to denigrate what they do. They're passionate about different aspects of the hobby. But for those people that are really genuinely interested in educating hams, KM4ACK, also, I will tell you that our whole end-fed half-wave antenna kit started with him. There were two problems. His was only 5 watts, and I thought a 7300 would melt it. And when I told him that our opening order would be 500 units, he dropped the phone. But, that's where the whole notion of doing an end-fed half-wave came from. So our role is really, this year in particular, has been put a spotlight on YouTube people that are doing great work with great content, and try to get that into the hands of people that are looking to do things like being a resilient citizen, and create those portable off-grid solutions that they need for themselves and for their family. Art, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, David and Cecil. Always good to see you in there. Thanks. We're kind of running short on time, so I want to ask people to keep their questions short. I was hoping to keep this a little over an hour. We've been going for an hour 17. First of all, I'm going to jump the list a little bit. Now, Lee Garner, W0UIG, is our Iowa section manager, one of our good volunteers. Lee, if you would put your camera on, I will spotlight you, and you can go ahead and ask your question or make your comment. Let me
All right. Well, I thought I would have the final word because I was last in line. So I'm just going to go ahead. All right. So tonight we're talking about change, and we're talking about the future and what we want to take with us into the future. And when I first became section manager, that my first forum was about what we want to take with us into the future. And so my point for this, I'll keep this short. So we have a vast amount of knowledge, and we have a broad input from our membership on many areas in amateur radio, old and new. And the board, in this decision that they recently made, they spent the time to research, they spent the time to discuss, they took the time to take a vote, and I can only imagine that it probably was not a unanimous vote. I'm not going to ask because it doesn't really matter. We can guess. In amateur radio, we don't always agree on everything. And there are things that I don't agree with here tonight. But the thing is that that board is still together, they're still functioning, and it works. So don't take your ball and go home. Stay with it. We have, if you want to be heard, raise your hand. As you can see, that's what you got to do. So if you have something that you want to bring in, please bring it. Those are our frequencies. That is our spectrum, and we will do what it takes to keep it. ARRL represents a huge portion of that. And like I said, sounds like closing remarks, so I'm going to quit there. Thanks.
I just want to, and thanks so much for those comments. What I will tell you is, when I came into ARRL, I found a board that was disjoint. I didn't see anybody. I use the expression holding hands. I didn't see anybody holding hands. I saw a couple over here and a couple over there. There was really no unifying message that was coming through from the board. I will tell you the first executive committee meeting I was on, which was in October of 2020, Rick Roderick, who's been a remarkable supporter of this organization and of me personally, during the peak of COVID, he got on an airplane. He didn't have to do that, but he got on an airplane to come up and work with me the day of the executive committee meeting. And at the end of the executive committee meeting, one of the people who was my earliest supporter and someone who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, John Robert Stratton, he asked if we could have a chat with the CEO. And we had about an hour and a half Zoom call after the EC meeting. And after that, I started to feel really good about the way that the board was talking about things. And Rick came out of he was in another room, right, with this COVID separation stuff we were doing. He came out of the conference room with, I've never seen him smile so big since. Biggest smile on his face. And to me, it really set into motion getting a board to hold hands and work together. You're absolutely right. Unless you're talking about the 100th anniversary, celebrating the 100th anniversary of a club, we have board members that are going to disagree. And there being a responsible dialogue with each other and getting to a point where everybody's had the opportunity to speak and be heard and collaborate, I think we make better decisions. You're right. The vote was not unanimous. What I will tell you, I said this on an interview I did recently. When I look at the board, I see 11 or 12 people that are holding hands. Not everybody is going to want to be one of the people holding hands. For whatever reason, they're going to want to be rogue. They're going to want to have their own individual message. They're going to want to look independent of the rest of the board and the organization. And they may, listen, when the minutes come out, you may see at least one of them that really decided to go off the reservation. But that's their right. That's their privilege. They're a board member. They can bring that. It doesn't mean everyone or it doesn't mean anyone will agree with them. But I think that you've made a really good point, and it's a point that I want to hit hard, is our board works really well together. All of this conspiracy garbage that you see on some of these Facebook groups, I have to tell you, if these people had any money, they'd be worth suing. But it's not worth going after them and getting down into the mud with them. The nonsense on these Facebook groups is laughable. The ARRL board, I will tell you, I've worked with boards before. This board in these last 3 years for me has never worked as well as it is today. And these are people that are committed to amateur radio. They're committed to each other, and they're committed to the success of ARRL. I don't know what else anybody could ask for. So
and I'd
anyway.
like to make a plug for the membership and the field services, in that we have been more communicative and taking that also to be heard to the board. And I think that nothing is ever perfect. No, and we're communicators and some of the worst communicators, and we all know that. But I think what we're doing is working. What we need to do is have people not leave, not walk away, but they do need to be heard, and that's what we're doing tonight. So.
Yep, perfect.
Thank you, David.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Lee. It's you're always a lot of fun to work with. I appreciate your comments. All right, we have some hands who've been up for a while. I'd like to get them very quickly, and then we're going to have to conclude this. So Dudley, KD0NMD, can you turn your camera on, and I will share your picture here?
Well, I am unmuted, but I do not have a camera, so you're stuck with my my hand and name and call sign. So I apologize, and I'll sell some tickets to something and get me a camera for the next time.
Yeah, just go ahead. That's fine, Dudley.
Yeah, David and Art and everybody else in here, thank you for this opportunity to have a venue to speak. And I speak from a standpoint of being the chairman for the KN0 BSA Mid-America Radio Scouting Group here around the Omaha area and eastern Nebraska. And there's, I don't know, 8 or 10 or 12 of us all in the group. I don't know exactly how many we are, but our primary focus is to put youth in general, scouts specifically, on the air through the radio scouting program. And so we are already in progress planning for the Jamboree on the air. And I put a note in the chat column to speak to that. And so we talk about wanting to get youth into the program. Well, go out and get them. And that is a statement and a challenge. When I got started with this about 13 years ago, the Mid-America Council had no idea what I was talking about. And so I began, stirring up interest, getting amateur radio operators to come together. And so for about 13 years now, we've been putting scouts on the air, and it is an imposition. It is uncomfortable. It is frustrating to do that. But out of that, we have made young people into radio operators. There are 3 in our area now that they've got years before they graduate from high school. And so it works, but you're only going to get about 1% out of that. So what do? We go address 200 or 300 at a time, and there will be the 3 or 4 that are interested, and you got to run them out of the shack at the end of the evening. Those are the ones that you want to reach out to build. Now, you're not going to get them to stick around. They're going to go out there and they're going to remember what you did. So the Jamboree on the air for 66 years has been the 3rd full weekend of October. Now, I know a lot of you are familiar with that, as am I, but we have to go out there and get rained on, wet, put up our antennas, put up with the frustration and put those kids on the air. And oh, by the way, they like Morse code better than about anything else, because we set up oscillators and we give them cheat sheets. And the next thing you know, they're beeping Morse code back and forth to one another. So I vehemently disagree that we do not need CW on the test, but we certainly need operators who are familiar with CW to go out into a campsite, be it a camporee or whatever, and get those kids involved. And so,
thank you. Thank you very much. I'm sorry to cut you short. I want to get a couple more people in here,
Yep.
but really
Thank
good
you.
comments, and I appreciate what you're doing. And I'd love to have an article from you for the newsletter.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, Alan, WD0DXD has been waiting for quite a while. Let me add your spotlight, and Alan, please go ahead.
Well, Art and David, I appreciate the opportunity. I empathize with you on the struggles that you're having at the headquarters, but I also feel like I work with the local club mostly, and we're having issues too that I think the ARRL could help with. For instance, we could probably talk for hours on this, but our focus on finances, we're having that kind of problem too. For instance, is right now our main repeater that's on a TV tower is up at 700 feet, and it is down right now. The coax, our hard line has been broken, so on and so forth. And if you know how expensive tower climbing is and hard line, our estimates right now are about $18,000 to get that back up. So we had to try to figure out a way to generate that revenue to replace that. Our first step, and this is one thing that I think the ARRL could do or help with a little bit more, is we did finally get our 501(c). We've been putting that off for quite a few years because we were incorporated in 1962, but going through the records, my son and I could not find that we ever filed anything with the federal government. And so we were really reluctant to go file for it and then come back and say, hey, we're going to fine you for not filing. Turned out to be a lot easier. Luckily, we do computer work for a local accounting firm that just started up. I contacted them. they said, we're take care of it. And I didn't realize that there's like a 1023 EZ or something like that. It's only,
Alan, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to ask you to summarize.
but
we're
anyway,
absolutely running out of time.
if the ARRL could help with that, if they could help with, you know, there's a lot of other different ways they could help. We recently signed up with Ham Clubs Online to do membership and everything, which really helped electronically. Those types of things, I think they, you know, I would have to venture to guess that a majority of your members are funneled through local clubs. And so whatever help could be given to the local clubs, I think would be advantageous to
Yep, just a-
headquarters.
Yeah, just a couple quick comments. First of all, the ARRL Foundation offers a grant program. Now, we don't have a lot of money in the endowment to give away, and the grants are generally less than $3,000. And it is a bit competitive, only because I've started to really market the fact that that grant program exists. So that's one opportunity for you to look. In particular, if that repeater is the main repeater in the area and it's down, you've got a very strong statement to make. The second thing, which hinges on your 501c, well, actually, before I get there, the second thing is that in the last year, we gave away over $500,000 that the ARDC gave us a club grant of $500,000. We actually overspent it by just a bit. But we had grant requests for over $2.5 million. And there's a lot of clubs that want to undertake a lot of projects, whether they're grants to sustain a club, or in this case, to do, you know, important maintenance. There's club growth programs that people put forward. There's a club in Connecticut that did something called the Marconi Project, which was to infuse club growth through a bunch of different initiatives. Now, we're in the process of doing the reporting and analysis on that with ARDC. And I'm hopeful that if we are able to agree that that money was well spent, that we would get more money for another round of club grants. The last thing that I would tell you, especially given the dollar level that you're at $18,000, and the fact that you've become a 501c3, is you do have the ability to apply for an ARDC grant for that full amount of money. So you should go to their website and take a look at, I think their next deadline is October 1st. So you've got between now and October 1st to put together a compelling grant application to look for the $18,000. If you're not aware of who ARDC is, the long story short is they've got about, give or take, $150 million in the bank, maybe less because of what the market's been doing, right, with unrealized losses, but it's more than $100 million. And what they do is that they take the earnings off of that and look to spend it each year on open source projects and amateur radio projects. So I would encourage you to go take a look, make a compelling application to ARDC and see if they're able to help fund that. Art,
Okay.
back to you.
All right, thank you very much. I was not going to take any more questions. Lloyd has been on here before. Lloyd, you've got 1 minute. Can you handle your comment in 1 minute?
In 1 minute, Kansas section manager is up for election. 2 division slots in the Midwest division are up for election. While it does save the league money to not have elections, what is the league doing to promote these elections better than they have? What plan is there for all sections to look the same? And are we going to eliminate section managers? Does the league finally have a continuity operations plan, and has it been peer reviewed? Thank you.
Lloyd, give me a break, man. You asked 20 questions with 1 minute left. Okay, so I'll go in reverse order. No, there's been no peer review business continuity plan or whatever for ARRL. We certainly have disaster recovery plans in place, and we've also enabled almost every employee to be able to work remotely because of COVID. So if we were to suffer some kind of a catastrophic loss, most of what we do is now in the cloud. We can access it remotely. And it's our intentions next year to do, hopefully with Director Mickey Baker's assistance, to do an IT audit of ARRL. No, we're not doing away with section managers. I don't know where that came from. And in terms of getting more people to vote, if you've got any clever ideas, you let me know, because I've been a member since I was in high school and I never voted. I just always felt like the ARRL was taking care of itself and they were looking out for me, and that was fine. But in terms of the director and vice director elections, we market that in terms of getting people excited about volunteering, raising their hand. This is the year of the volunteer. I don't think necessarily that we have the same issues getting director and vice director candidates that we do with section manager candidates. Some sections are harder to find volunteers than others, but there is an election coming up, and it is a time for members to be able to look at who's running and reflect on the work that their existing director and vice director have done, and move forward from there. Art?
Thank you very much, David. I appreciate your time as usual. Appreciate you taking your evening and spending with us. And of course, I appreciate all the good work you're doing for the league. And I absolutely agree with you. We have a good board, a strong board now, and these are good times. Thank you, sir. All right, at that point, we'll go back, and I'd like to finish up. I appreciate everybody taking part. I will note that Bob Interbits and NQ1R put a chat up for clubs saying that about the application deadlines. You can submit application anytime. In 2023, ARRDC will begin reviewing applications on February 1st, April 1st, July 1st, October 1. You can see the link in the chat if you're interested, and thank you so much for that. At this point, we want to do something very quick. If I can find my form, there it is. We've covered a lot of good things. I appreciate all the comments, all the thoughts, all the questions. And of course, you can write me, and if I can answer the question, I will. If I can't, I'll get somebody at headquarters to answer it. I was going to go through the Hamfest, but I'll save some time. You can save the Hamfest, or save the Hamfest in our newsletter, and also you can do a search at the ARRL website. Please support your local Hamfest. Dave and I try to get to, and the section managers try to get the ones we can. They're a lot of fun, a good part of this job. Dave, would you like to come on for a minute or two and talk about VOTA?
Sure. Good evening again, everybody. I know it's been a long meeting, so I have a set of slides that talk about the current status of VOTA, but I will save those for. I'll be up at the Cedar Valley Hamfest this weekend, and probably include some of those in my presentation. If you're not there, if you'd like to see an update on VOTA, just go to the ARRL VOTA website, and you'll see the latest information there. Upcoming events for VOTA, W1AW portable activities on August 2nd, starting the week of August 2nd, Minnesota and Kentucky will be on. The week of August 9th, New Jersey, the week of August 16th. By the way, who wants to talk to anybody in New Jersey, right, David? Just kidding. The week of August 16th, Vermont and Oklahoma. The week of August 23rd, North Dakota and Idaho. And the week of August 30th, Arizona and Ohio. So if you're chasing the Work All States VOTA W1AW award, that will get you started. The complete schedule is also on the VOTA website. Other than that, let's turn it back to you, Art, because I know we've gone way past our bedtime.
Thank you very much, Dave. I appreciate that. And there was a note again from Bob Interbitson to look at voda.awrl.org to get more information on the volunteers on the air. With that, I'm going to unspot myself so everybody can see everybody. I want to thank you all for taking part. I want to thank our section managers for being here and discussing and listening to people. I especially want to thank David Minster and Rick Roderick for taking part, for Steve Ewald, for Bob Intervitson to be hiding in the background answering questions. I appreciate that very much. We're here to help. So please email me if you have questions, comments, thoughts that we didn't get to. I will post a video of this event on my YouTube channel. I will send that out, the link out to the division. So if you know people who should have seen it or might have wanted to see it, you can let them know. If you would like to review and watch it all again, you can certainly do that. And with that, I'd like to say 7-3 to all of you. Wish you all well, and thank you very much for supporting the hobby and supporting the ARRL. Thank you. With that, good night.